as soon as the revolution took hold, unleashed a wave of terror. A wave of terror, Mr. Speaker, including executions by firing squad designed to reduce the population into submission. I believe my time is up. I'll be happy to resume debate after question period, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Parry Sound will have 7 minutes remaining when we come back from question period. Statements by members. Déclaration de députés. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Newsflash. Parliamentary committee finds as fact that first past the post is inappropriate in any democracy with more than 2 parties contesting elections. Well, that's actually not a newsflash. That was the finding of the first parliamentary committee in 1921. So now the parliamentary committee reporting in 2016 has taken it at long last. There's been something of an interregnum, we admit, between 1921 and now. And in that time, there have been many other studies across Canada, provincial studies, citizens' assemblies, the Law Commission. No group of Canadians ever studying the first-past-the-post voting system have ever concluded we should keep it. It's flawed. It distorts voters' intent. And yes, this parliamentary committee found that the Prime Minister is right. 2015 should be the last election held under first-past-the-post.
The honourable member for Sydney, Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, November 21st, the Whitney Pier Youth Club reopened its doors following an $800,000 in renovations. Whitney Pier is a strong, proud, and resilient community in my riding, where its people's descendants came from all over the world to work in the former steel plant. The club has an expanded kitchen, recording studio, computer lab, and many other activities available for the youth in the surrounding community. The club is home to more than 100 children each day. It has a total membership of 230. This is a tremendous asset to the community and has been serving the youth since 1989. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the Whitney Pier Youth Club, the Voda Club Director Chester Borden, and the surrounding community for their commitment and determination to make this new club a reality.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
Mr. Speaker, this week the Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment listed 84 municipalities and reservations that are under drinking water advisories or boil water orders. It is unacceptable that in 2016 many families in Saskatchewan across Canada do not have reliable access to clean drinking water. Yet despite this deplorable situation, the government spends millions of dollars in pursuit of an abstract climate change policy that has no foundation in real science. The people of Saskatchewan and all Canadians need and deserve an environmental policy that focuses on real policies like providing clean drinking water. Instead, Canadians are being threatened with a tax on carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide tax will kill jobs, but more importantly, it will drive up the cost of living for everyone in Canada, especially the middle class and low-income families, the people who can least afford it. Mr. Speaker, the people of Saskatchewan want this government to end its war on Canadian oil and gas and coal, and instead focus on delivering clean air and...
The member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, sports play an important role in all communities across Canada. My riding of Newmarket Aurora is no exception. We are blessed to have not one but 2 Sports Hall of Fames in my community. Recently, the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame moved into its new location at the Stronach Aurora Recreation Centre and inducted 4 new members, Olympian Karen Stemmel, NHLers Mike Murphy and Mike Kitchen, and figure skating coach Sheldon W. Galbraith. The Newmarket Sports Hall of Fame, Mr. Speaker, located at the Magna Centre, also recently inducted 3 new members, Stingray swim coach Alan Swanston, international handball champion Harold McLean, and the 1950s Newmarket's Gorman Smoke Rings hockey team. I was proud to attend the induction ceremony and to celebrate the rich history of sports excellence in our riding. Thank you to the volunteers at both Halls of Fame, and thank you for helping make our community the great place that it is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, on World AIDS Day, we remember the loved ones we've lost. We recognize the victories won through the dedicated efforts of patients, caregivers, advocates, and researchers, and we recommit to building a world where no one has to know the isolation, stigmatization, and pain brought by HIV and AIDS. While the Prime Minister has rightly asserted that Canada should be a leader in the fight against HIV/AIDS on the global stage. Domestically, his government has been denying assistance to many HIV/AIDS organizations in Canada, many who have received support for decades. If this is not reversed, there will be serious gaps in critical services in communities across our nation. Today, New Democrats call on the government to immediately reverse these funding cuts and expand the federal initiative on HIV/AIDS. Now, more than ever, we must provide support and compassion to every Canadian living with these conditions. Working together, we can reduce new infections, increase access to care, improve health outcomes, and ultimately forge a future without HIV and AIDS.
The honourable member for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, I too rise today on World AIDS Day to salute the efforts of the many organizations working to rid the world of HIV/AIDS and to bring attention to the often overlooked issue of TB/HIV co-infection. Tuberculosis is the #1 killer of people with HIV. In fact, for people living with HIV, contracting TB doubles their risk of dying. Last year alone, TB took the lives of 400,000 people living with HIV. That's 35% of all AIDS-related deaths. So, as we work towards creating a world free of HIV/AIDS, let's make sure we also work to prevent further loss of life. That means taking action on tuberculosis and ensuring we do better for people living with HIV. By supporting initiatives that improve prevention and treatment of TB, we can create the conditions necessary for people living with HIV to survive and thrive.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a local hero, Bo Cooper, a firefighter in my riding of Fort McMurray, Cold Lake. A little over 3 weeks ago, Bo lost his life from leukemia. Bo Cooper, who became known as Unbreakable Bo, battled hard against this disease since 2011. Twice Bo went into remission, and twice the cancer came back. But that did not stop him from fighting this disease and inspiring people across this country. Bo was only 27 when he passed, but despite being young, he touched the lives of so many. As a local firefighter in Fort McMurray and a former mixed martial arts fighter, Bo was never one to back down from a challenge. The people of Fort McMurray rallied around Bo, helping to raise money for his treatment. Bo's passing is deeply felt in our community, but he leaves behind an inspiring message: never give up, never back down. Bo, you'll be sorely missed. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, when the BC Centre for Excellence in HIV/AIDS opened in 1992, one British Columbian a day was dying from AIDS. Today, the Centre for Excellence, headed by Dr. Julio Montana, is at the forefront of the pandemic, focused on health and social determinants, prevention, new antiretroviral treatments. It is lauded by the World Health Organization for major advances in antiretroviral therapy, adopted by many nations globally. The BC government made treatment as prevention universal a few years ago, and coupled with social programs like harm reduction and Insight, BC now has the lowest number of new HIV cases in North America. Yet HIV/AIDS continues to rise alarmingly in other parts of Canada. Globally, there are still 2 million new cases a year. I am proud my new government embraces evidence-based HIV/AIDS health policies focused on most at-risk populations. I am proud we have committed to the WHO 90-90-90 target here and internationally. Today, my friend Dr. Julio Montana is on the Hill.
The honourable member for Acadie-Bathurst. Mr. Speaker, last week, the Cooperative Association of Island Fishermen in my riding of Acadie-Bathurst received the annual prize from the Economic Council of New Brunswick. The enterprise started in 1943, grouping together many co-ops that wanted to build a refrigerated warehouse in Lamec in order to process cod. Today, the co-op plays a frontline role in the economy of the Acadian Peninsula. It has 450 employees, is one of the biggest northern shrimp processing plants. It also processes snow crab, common crab, herring roes, lobster, and new products. I would like to congratulate the leaders and all the employees of this business that is the pride of the riding of Acadie-Bathurst.
For Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, It is my pleasure today to rise and congratulate the Pacific Autism Family Network that has just opened their new family hub in my riding of Richmond Center. With family-friendly spaces created specifically to foster a calm and collaborative environment, the Family Hub will provide a network of support for individuals with autism spectrum disorder and their families. This organization has been working extremely hard to raise the necessary funds to open this center, which will serve families across BC. I was so pleased to join them recently at their ribbon-cutting celebration, and I look forward to seeing the success of this facility in our community. Congratulations to all involved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for St. John's South Mount Pearl.
Mr. Speaker, everyone in this House knows that Canada's North is the home of Santa Claus and that the North American Aerospace Defense Command was created to track his whereabouts on Christmas Eve, Mr. Speaker. I grew up in Goose Bay, Labrador, which is located in Canada's North and is the home of an Air Force base that is part of NORAD. Mr. Speaker, because of this, because of my long-standing, long-distance, but nonetheless heartfelt relationship with Mr. Claus, I want to advise my colleagues that NORAD has begun tracking Santa's sleigh.
I'd like to encourage all the boys and girls in this House and in my riding of St. John's South Mount Pearl and across Canada to visit the online Santa tracker at www.noradsanta.org in order to follow his progress or to download the app to follow him in real time. Mr. Speaker, happy holidays to all.
The honourable member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, today marks World AIDS Day, a day dedicated to show support for individuals living and affected by HIV, and to remember those who have lost their lives to HIV and AIDS. In Canada, 1 in 5 people living with HIV are unaware of their infection. Many Canadians who have never been tested or may not consider themselves at risk could benefit from a test. Earlier today, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Justice, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Heritage, National Chief Perry Bellegarde, and I received a rapid HIV test. Within minutes, we were able to know our HIV status. Knowing your HIV status is a critical first step in assessing life-saving treatment and care if needed. Let's lead the conversation with our fellow Canadians on the importance of getting tested for HIV, knowing your status, and ending the stigma so we can all make Canada and the world HIV and AIDS free. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal plan to replace Canada's CF-18 fighter jets is an incoherent mess. They say there's a capability gap which requires urgent action, but their plan is anything but urgent. They announced that next year they will enter into discussions with Boeing to buy 18 Super Hornets, but they have no idea what the price tag is or when the planes can be delivered. Mr. Speaker, if the need is so urgent that we must sole source an interim fleet, why can't this happen immediately? Procurement rules are clear that non-competitive tenders are only allowed in actual or imminent life-threatening situations. If that is what the government truly thinks, then why are they delaying any decision on replacing our CF-18s for years to come? The answer, of course, Mr. Speaker, is simple. It's politics, pure and simple. Prime Minister made a contradictory promise based on his own whims rather than the advice of defense experts. Sadly, all Canadians will soon pay for the Prime Minister's mistakes, his lack of experience, and his arrogance. Thank you.
Here, here, well said.
Member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
When immigration and innovation align, it makes for one great announcement. Yesterday, I welcomed the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship and the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development to my riding. The two ministers announced our government's global skills strategy at one of the many great companies, Therapure Biopharma, a fast-growing biopharmaceutical company. To be implemented in 2017, the Global Skills Strategy will establish a 2-week standard for processing visas and work permits for companies in Canada, create a dedicated service channel for companies looking to make large job-creating investments, and will also eliminate the work permit requirement for very short-term work. I would like to commend the ministers for their work on this project, and I look forward to working with them in implementing the Global Skills Strategy. Thank you.
Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. After 5 months of consultation and long labor and gestation, the Electoral Reform Committee has finally given birth, and it's proportional. Nobody believed in it, but yet we did it. All the opposition parties agreed on the way forward and how to achieve that. This is a great victory for all those who think that it's high time that this Parliament reflect the will of the people. People want their vote to count and that their voice be heard in the Parliament. This is what we're offering. That's what 89% of all experts and citizens told us during public hearings. Even though the government seems to be backing down on this file, I hope it will take the recommendations of the committee seriously. We are asking them to come up with an action plan and respect their own promises, and we're showing them the way. The time has come for true change to our election system so that every vote can count.
Mr. Speaker, what took place in this House the other night, it made me sick. Bill S-217 aimed to toughen our bail laws after the tragic murder of RCMP Constable David Wynn. This Liberal government will not support this common-sense change. The killer in this case had hundreds of charges against him, dozens of convictions, several jail terms, routinely didn't show up for court, and he still had 29 outstanding charges against him, including weapons and drug bans, at the time he killed Constable Wynn. Had the judge known about this history, he would have not been on the streets. My blood boils, Mr. Speaker. Without improving the system, learning from our mistakes, we are destined to repeat history. I have no hesitation in saying that the next time this tragedy happens, this Liberal government will have blood on their hands.
Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne.
Mr. Speaker, the past few weeks have been difficult and stark reminders for all of us the sacrifices members of the Canadian Armed Forces and their families make on our collective behalf. It cannot be understated how grateful each of us are in this place to each and all of you.
The decision to don a uniform is one that our military take proudly, well aware of the risks both at home and abroad. For all those who serve their country with honour, we will always remember you as Canadian heroes.
Heroes are not the only ones who serve, of course. Often it is said that the families serve along with them. The pride we feel for our serving family member is immense. From one family member to another, our heart goes out to the families, friends, and colleagues grieving at this time. I ask my parliamentary family to join me in honouring our fallen heroes. Thank you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the report of the Multi-Party Committee on Democratic Reform is in, and the recommendation is clear. If the Prime Minister wants to change the rules of democracy, then Canadians get to have a say in a referendum. This is a huge victory for democracy and a huge victory for Canadians. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister actually respect the recommendations in this report and commit to holding a referendum if he wants to change the way we vote?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Sure, I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question, and of course the members of the special committee studying this for their time and effort. We've received the report. I'm going to review it carefully, and I urge every member of this House to do the same. I know this was a challenging process, and the report shows just how challenging electoral reform can be because, Mr. Speaker, the only consensus that the report found was that there is no consensus on electoral reform. In the coming days, we'll be taking specific actions to continue this conversation with Canadians.
The Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the
All-Party Committee on Electoral Reform was tabled, and it made a clear recommendation. If the Prime Minister is going to change the rules of democracy, Canadians must have a say. It's a huge victory for democracy. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister respect the recommendation from the committee and commit to holding a referendum if he plans to change the voting system?
Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, we've received the report, and we encourage all members of this House to do the same. And first impressions, Mr. Speaker, there are some good ideas in there. For example, the only way that we can engage Canadians on their preference for an alternative to first past the post is through a value-based conversation. But on the main question, Mr. Speaker, on the hard choices that we'd asked the committee to make, Mr. Speaker, they took a pass. The NDP critics said, choose your own adventure. I thank the committee for their time and will continue this conversation.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this is unbelievable. The multi-party committee spoke, and they were clear. Canadians have also spoken that a referendum needs to be done. From the other side is that the Prime Minister thinks he's smarter than Canadians, that only he can decide how we vote and what our vote means. Mr. Speaker, that's an insult to every Canadian in this country, and if he wants to change the way we vote, he has to have a referendum.
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
To the contrary, Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister asked that we bring together a special committee to study the options available to us and to recommend a specific system as an alternative to first past the post. Mr. Speaker, we asked the committee to help answer very difficult questions for us. They did not do that. We now have to make those hard changes, Mr. Speaker, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with Canadians.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the insults just keep coming from the other side of the House. Every opposition party worked together, worked hard, and came to a consensus. The problem here is that the Prime Minister doesn't want to listen to Canadians. He doesn't want to listen to the other parties, just like he won't have a referendum because he thinks the Canadians aren't smart enough and aren't smart as he is to pick the kind of system that we rely on. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is wrong. Canadians are smart enough to cast a vote.
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions. Order.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are smart, reasonable people, and we're doing this for them. The committee did not offer a specific alternative to first past the post. Instead, they offered us the Gallagher Index, Mr. Speaker. So the honourable member wants us to have a referendum on the following. Would Canadians like to take the square root of the sum of the squares of the difference between the percentage of the seats for each party and the percentage of the votes cast?
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, World AIDS Day is when we show our support for those living with HIV and AIDS. But this Prime Minister is planning to cut funding to many community-based organizations, including the Canadian AIDS Society and the All Nations HoC Network. That's the only Aboriginal AIDS network in Saskatchewan. They're on the front lines fighting against HIV/AIDS, and they may be forced to close their doors. So instead of just raising flags on World AIDS Day, will the Prime Minister commit to stable, long-term funding for these important organizations?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern
Government
Affairs.
is deeply committed to addressing HIV/AIDS and hepatitis C in Canada, with community-based organizations being central to this. The funding we provide through the Community Action Fund remains steady at $26.4 million annually, while 124 organizations were successful in the application process, some were not, which is why the Minister of Health has asked the Public Health Agency to assist these impacted organizations by working with them to extend transitional funding for another year.
Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, after 6 months of hard work, the Committee on Election Reform has proposed a proportional representation system. This is a great victory for all Canadians who told us that they're fed up with our old, unfair system. Yesterday, the Prime Minister again committed to putting an end to the current system. Can we count on this government, this Liberal government, to implement the recommendations of the committee to put in place a proportional system?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for his passion and the committee for the time they spent studying alternatives to first past the post. And Mr. Speaker, when we made the commitment to introduce a new option, we did so based on the understanding that a committee would come together and recommend alternatives to first past the post, that they would help us answer the difficult questions, Mr. Speaker. Instead, what the members across the aisle, my NDP critic, has suggested is that we choose our own adventure. Mr. Speaker, if we were going to choose our own adventure, why would we have brought together a committee to study electoral reform?
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
You know, if it looks like, smells like, it should be. Qu'est-ce que la ministre comprend pas?
What doesn't the minister understand about the word proportional? The minister responsible for democratic reform launched a consultation, an online consultation with questions like, do you like taking risks? Or do you prefer sticking to what you already know? Is this not an attempt to undermine the consultation process? It's a colossal, enormous work that the committee did over the past 6 months, and will the government listen to the recommendations by the committee and the HoCs?
Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the committee for their hard work, and we will be reviewing their report, and I urge all members to do the same. And Mr. Speaker, complementary to the work of the committee, to the outreach that my parliamentary secretary and I have done, we committed to introducing another channel to hear from Canadians. This new digital initiative, which the member opposite has not even seen yet, so I'm not sure what questions he's referring to, will include an invitation to every Canadian. Canadians can expect their invitations in the mail this Monday.
Honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley, order.
Another channel. Sounds like they're trying to change the channel, Mr. Speaker. Well, what a day. I'd like to start by thanking all the members of the committee for their incredible work. We managed to do something that has never been done before. Skeptics said that it would all fall apart, that there was simply no way forward to finding agreement between all of these parties. Yet Canadians defied the cynics and told us that they want a proportional voting system in overwhelming numbers. That is a good day for Canada. Can the minister tell us when the government will announce a clear plan and timetable to implement all of the committee's recommendations?
Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my NDP critic for his work on the committee and for his continued commitment to strengthening our democratic institutions. Mr. Speaker, I have to admit I'm a little bit disappointed because what we had hoped the committee would provide us with would be a specific alternative system to first past the post. Instead, Mr. Speaker, they've provided us with the Gallagher Index. Mr. Speaker, while they did not complete the hard work we had expected them to, this is consistent with what we heard from Canadians. We will continue.
Order. We're losing time from question period. Taking time up from question period. The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
I want to say I appreciate the feedback, but the committee worked together. The committee worked across party lines. The committee reflected back what we heard from Canadians. That may be a bit of a radical notion from some of my Liberal colleagues, but that was the work of the committee, and the work of this minister is to fulfill the promise of that Prime Minister when he stood in front of Canadians on multiple occasions and said 2015 was going to be the last election under first past the post. So her job is to work with the rest of us and work with Canadians to achieve that goal, rather than throwing on skepticism, rather than heaping on false notions of broad support. You wonder where their broad support was when they declare war or announce pipeline recommendations. Let's get the job done.
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has a point. There were some good recommendations in the report. For example, the best way to have a conversation with Canadians about their electoral system is through a value-based approach. To that end, Mr. Speaker, we'll be continuing this conversation with Canadians through a digital initiative. Members in this House are expected to allow their constituents to know that it's happening and ensure that their voices are heard. We will be introducing recommendations to this House based on all the feedback we've received, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I remind colleagues that the time to speak is when they have the floor, not at other times.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on another very important subject, many provinces are facing difficulties taking criminals to court. Canadians have seen the Minister of Justice and are wondering what she can do to improve the system. Criminal trials may not take place. What does the Minister plan to do to ensure that justice is rendered in this country?
Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question, and certainly recognize that we are working in a concerted manner in concert with the provinces and territories, because we share jurisdiction over the criminal justice system, to ensure that we can improve the efficiencies and the effectiveness in the justice system. While recognizing that there are court delays, we are working in a coordinated manner to ensure that we address the many realities of what leads to court delays, and I look forward to continuing this work.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, when people commit crimes, it's at the expense of other people's, and those people are victims. Victims today are watching the Government of Canada to see how their rights will be defended and how those criminals will be taken to court and how justice will be rendered. What does the Minister plan to do, Mr. Speaker?
Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again, I thank the member opposite for the question and know that I've been tasked by the Prime Minister to do a comprehensive review of the criminal justice system. I'm committed to doing that in partnership with the provinces and territories, recognizing the need for public safety, recognizing the need to support victims of crime, recognizing that we need to ensure that we're compliant with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and ensuring that we look at all sources for innovative solutions to improve the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, including looking at the interim report that was just released by the Senate committee.
For Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, on November the 3rd, the Minister of Democratic Institutions told the Huffington Post that she wanted the Special Committee on Electoral Reform to, and I quote her, help us understand and answer this question. When we come up with a reform to the way Canadians vote, how do we figure out if it has broad support? Is it through a referendum, or is there another way? Well, the answer to the Minister from the committee is this. It is a referendum. There is no other way. Therefore, will the Minister commit not to change the way Canadians vote unless she first gets their consent in a referendum?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for his work on this special committee and his commitment to a healthier democracy. However, Mr. Speaker, what he's recommended as part of the committee's report is a referendum on an incomprehensible formula. And in the dissenting reports that the NDP and the Green Party have provided, they have contradicted and undermined a referendum. I thank the committee for their work, and we will continue this conversation with Canadians before introducing legislation in this House.
For Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Well, thank you for that response from the Minister for incomprehensibility. Mr. Speaker, a month ago, the Minister also said, and I quote her again, if the committee comes back, and this is how much respect I have for the committee's work, if the committee comes back and says a referendum is the only way to legitimize this process, then I have to take that very seriously, end quote. The Minister did in fact say in his majority report, from which only the Liberals dissented, that a referendum is the only way to legitimize changing the voting system. Therefore, will the Minister commit to not change the system unless she has the consent of the Canadian people in a referendum?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I'd like to remind the member opposite that the committee did not offer a specific alternative to first past the post, that the NDP and the Green Party in their dissenting reports undermined and contradicted their position on a referendum. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we will continue this conversation with Canadians before arriving at a final outcome.
The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. The best way, Mr. Speaker, to keep a conversation going with Canadians is to hold a referendum. The best way to know what Canadians think of the election system is through a referendum. The best way to set aside politicians and to put the power in the hands of the citizens is through a referendum. When, Mr. Speaker, will the government understand this? When will the government agree with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who said not too long ago that a referendum was necessary? The best way to know what people want is through a referendum. You must know that.
Honourable Minister for Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member. He too served quite a bit of time on the committee and contributed to the final report. Mr. Speaker, the final report, while it does not outline a specific alternative to first past the post, does raise some good points that we need to ensure that those Canadians who belong to marginalized communities are better heard and reflected in our elections, that the conversation about electoral reform has to be a value-based one. To that end, Mr. Speaker, we'll be reaching out to Canadians through a new digital initiative starting next week.
Honourable Member for Banff, Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians believe that there should be no changes to the way that they vote without a referendum first. And an Angus Reid poll showed that a resounding 75% of Canadians feel this way. And now the special committee has agreed a referendum is required. So what has been the Liberal government's response? Well, some vague notion of citizen engagement and some postcard about values. There is no other form of citizen engagement that is a replacement for a referendum. So will the Liberals finally acknowledge that they can't change Canadians' voting system without giving them a direct say in a referendum?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
My thanks to the member opposite. I'd like to point out again that there was no specific system advocated for on behalf of the committee. The only thing that there was consensus on in that regards, Mr. Speaker, is that there is no consensus on a specific system to first past the post. That said, Mr. Speaker, we take this seriously. We're not done hearing from Canadians. We'll be reaching out to them through an invitation they'll receive in their mailbox as soon as next week, and we're looking forward to hearing from as many voices as possible before making an introductory legislation in this House.
Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, on World AIDS Day, it's unfortunate to note that the Public Health Agency of Canada has cut funding to dozens of HIV/AIDS organizations, many of who have received support for decades. If the Liberal government doesn't reverse these cuts, there will be serious gaps in critical services for communities across Canada. Now, this means cuts to services for First Nations and Inuit, inmates in corrections, and vulnerable Canadians in rural and urban Canada. In 2003, Liberals pledged to increase HIV/AIDS support. Will this Liberal minister follow through and invest these critical funds?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, addressing HIV and AIDS in Canada is a significant priority for our government. I was pleased to meet with the Canadian AIDS Society today. This year, our government is investing almost $76 million across the country to tackle HIV and other related infections in Canada. In terms of the Community Action Fund, we remain steady at $26.4 million, and we've asked our department to assist impacted organizations by working with them to extend translational funding for another year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Following the announcement by the Prime Minister to increase Canada's contribution to the Global Fund to fight AIDS by 20%, we've learned that home-based organizations here are seeing their funding eliminated. Some are being subjected to a 70% cut to their budget, thereby jeopardizing their very existence. How can the government justify its choice to increase funding internationally and to cut funding for our organizations? Can they suspend this new process and maintain the status quo?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, our government is deeply committed to addressing HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis C in Canada, with community-based organizations being central to this. The funding we provide through the Canada Action Fund remains steady at $26.4 million annually. While 124 organizations were successful in the application process, some were not, which is why the Minister of Health has asked the Public Health Agency of Canada to assist these impacted organizations by working with them to extend transitional funding for another year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, we know that on November 16th, stock trading on the TSX was halted for Canopy Growth after their stock doubled for no apparent reason. There are serious allegations that insider information was used to influence stock trades. Can the Justice Minister confirm that an investigation has been launched of this possible leak and insider trading, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make it very clear that I nor my ministerial colleagues have seen this report. This was confirmed by the chair of the task force yesterday. The report wasn't available. The member should know that capital markets are strictly regulated, and any investigation or looking into this matter in terms of irregularities is the responsibility of the Ontario Securities Commission.
Honourable Member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, former Liberal Party CFO and big marijuana kingpin Chuck Rafici and the Justice Minister would have us believe that there's nothing here to see. They claim the pot search is because of the American election a week earlier. But Canadian companies can't ship pot across the border, and guess what? No American pot companies saw their stock surge like the Liberal-connected companies here in Canada. Will the Prime Minister and Minister tell us if an investigation has been launched into this potential leak?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Any irregularities in the market, the member should know, are monitored and regulated by the Ontario Securities Commission. I want to reiterate once again that I have not seen this report. There is no evidence that this report has been leaked. My ministerial colleagues and every member in this House and the public will see the report at the same time that I do in the middle of December.
The
Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, fancy $1,500 appetizers for access to ministers, $1 million donation by a rich Chinese man. There's reason to believe now that the Liberal government's friends are going to want something in return. Mr. Speaker, the work of the Marijuana Task Force may contain information that's privileged, information that can influence the markets. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister of Justice confirm for this House whether or not a formal investigation has been put in place with this potential leak of information?
Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I'll get up again and address this somewhat absurd line of questioning. This report has there's no evidence that this report has been leaked. I, to be clear, have not seen the report, nor has anyone. I will see the report once it's translated along with every member in this House in order to have a discussion, in order to move forward with our government commitment to legalize and strictly regulate and restrict access of marijuana. I value the work that the task force has undertaken, the commitment that the task force members have made to providing recommendations so we can proceed in a manner that is consistent on this complex.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer-Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear that when you want something from this Liberal government, all you have to do is pay the entry fee to one of their consultations. Their friends at Canada 2020 and Blue Sky Strategies know it. Their friends at Apotex know it. Chinese billionaire bankers know it. And their pot friends know it too. Everyone can see it. The Liberals are only fooling themselves. When will the Prime Minister finally do the right thing and put an end to his cash for access fundraisers?
Here, here.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure how many times I need to rise in this House to remind the member very well that in Canada we have some of the strictest rules when it comes to fundraising. And the member knows very well that only Canadians can donate to Canadian political parties. Even the Chief Electoral Officer has stated the rules are some of the strictest in the world. Mr. Speaker, the member needs to listen to the answer and get real and do the work that Canadians expect us to do to respond to the very real challenges they are.
Order. Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the minister continues to deny that CETA will increase prescription drug costs for Canadians, it's clear that she has something to hide. Last year, the parliamentary budget officer wrote to at least 4 federal departments trying to track down the figures. We know that the information exists because Health Canada handed over their data. Why is this minister hiding the facts from Canadians? When will she reveal just how much CETA will increase the cost of medicines? And for once, will she answer a direct question?
Yeah.
Honourable comment to Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government is already working to improve the affordability of and access to prescription drugs. We join provinces and territories as the member of the Pan-Canadian Pharmaceutical Alliance, which negotiate lower drug prices on behalf of public drug plans. To date, the PCPA has completed more than 95 brand drug negotiations and achieved price regulations on 18 generic drugs, resulting in annual savings of more than $712 million. In the coming months, I will continue, Minister of Health will continue to work with the provincial and territorial counterparts to identify...
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, once again, I asked a very simple question to the government, and it seems like they don't want to listen. The softwood lumber industry is about to go through another major crisis. The Minister of International Trade keeps congratulating her government, and yet more and more voices are calling for a loan guarantee plan to support industry. Thousands of jobs are on the line, and a Plan B is an important but missing piece of this puzzle. Can the Minister please confirm to all of our workers today, right now, is there a Plan B ready? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. The softwood lumber agreement expired under the previous government. We continue to work closely with producers, workers, the provinces and the territories, and we will continue to work with them. Canada is prepared for any eventuality, and our government will vigorously defend the interests of our producers and workers. We are looking for a good agreement for Canada, not just any agreement.
Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, the government recently announced the Oceans Protection Plan, and this House should know that investing in marine safety not only benefits coastal communities, but watershed communities like my riding of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge. Could the Minister tell this House about the measures that the OPP takes with regard to improving marine safety?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Thank my honourable colleague for his question. Yes, the $1.5 billion Oceans Protection Plan will indeed seriously improve marine safety. It will make us more quickly aware of any marine incidents. It will help us to respond more effectively and more rapidly. It will involve our coastal First Nations, who will be trained and equipped and given the authority to respond to local marine incidents. It will improve our hydrographic services for better navigation. It will ensure that certain critical fish habitats are protected, as well as marine species. We want to make sure that our coasts are safe, clean, and healthy for
the Honourable Member for Beauport Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, we know three things. One, the Minister of Public Services and Procurement does not know the price of the Super Hornet jets. Number two, the Liberals are starting to negotiate with Boeing in the United States. They're putting their cards on the table before the game starts. Third, the open and transparent process to replace the fighter jet fleet will not be concluded before the 2019 elections. It's clear the Liberals are either utterly incompetent or they have a hidden agenda. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister please confirm which of those two statements is true?
Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, let me confirm for my colleague once again that this government is committed to an open and transparent process to make sure that the men and women in uniform get the equipment they need to do the job expected of them. With respect to the interim, it's really important for us to fill the capability gap that's been identified. We will do that working with Boeing, but nowhere would anyone commit to a figure before the negotiations actually take place.
Order. I've heard a lot today from the member for Abbotsford. He hasn't had the floor, so I'd like him to try to restrain himself. I know he can do it. The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Works Minister has misled Canadians on the scope and cost of the Phoenix Pay fiasco every step of the way. Now she's adding her personal touches to the jet fighter program by placing a lifetime gag order on over 200 public servants and manufacturing evidence to support a fake capability gap. She's even told this House to be foolhardy to negotiate pricing before committing to the sole source purchase. With this track record, how can Canadians possibly trust this minister to buy the right jet at the right price for our Air Force?
Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, what we won't do is what the previous government did, and that was to put up figures that were totally irresponsible. In fact, they put up so many figures when it came to procurement for D&D that they kept having to changing them because they were so unrealistic. We will not do this. We will be responsible with Canadian taxpayers' money, and we will get the best deal we can for the men and women of our armed forces.
Member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
Speaker, today the minister's ill-advised and weak-willed decision of lifting the visa requirement for Mexicans without a formal review will come into effect. However, yesterday we learned exactly how much this will cost Canadians. The minister's own officials say that it will cost Canadian taxpayers over $261 million above any benefits that we might receive, mostly for processing and deporting bogus Mexican refugees. So can the minister explain to this House why he made this unsafe and politicized decision when he knew the cost?
Great question. Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I am particularly grateful to my colleague for her question today because it gives me the opportunity to announce the very good news that it is today that we are lifting the Mexico visa. Mr. Speaker, this is good news for Canadian tourist industry. It will create many jobs. It is definitely good news for our beef farmers who will be able to export their wonderful product to Mexico.
Member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure why the Liberal caucus would stand up and applaud the waste of $261 million. These are people's hard-earned taxpayer dollars. He's going to be wasting it on deporting bogus Mexican refugees when his department officials told him this. Why does this minister even have a job?
Why won't he listen? Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Why don't I have a job? I think I do have a job. But, Mr. Speaker, as I just said, there are many benefits coming from this accord. As in any undertaking, there are risks, and we are working very carefully and strongly with the government of Mexico to manage those risks in a responsible way.
Honourable Member for Desnethi, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, the Youth Unity Journey for Sacred Waters group from Stanley Mission in my riding is walking to Standing Rock. They stand in solidarity with peaceful protesters who are facing state violence. Some have been severely injured. We need to support Indigenous people in their right to protect their land and resources. Will this government take a stand with us and condemn the violence against peaceful protesters and stand with the people of Standing Rock?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has said one of the great things about Canada is people are more than free to express their opinions and to express their disappointment with governments in peaceful ways. And we expect them and encourage them to do so. There are passionate voices on all sides of these decisions. Some people want everything built, some want nothing built. Our government is committed to making decisions based on facts and evidence. We believe the decision that we took this week are in the best interests of Canada and indeed in the best interests of Canadians. Thank you.
Member for Churchill, Kiewit-Nokaski.
Mr. Speaker, the question was about Standing Rock and the aggression that people are seeing there, including Canadian citizens. But let's talk about inequality, which is growing in our country. More and more Canadians facing precarious work, as was shown in the CIBC report. We know that more and more young Canadians are stuck in low-wage work, and an alarming 61% of Canadians are earning less than the average yearly income. The response of the Prime Minister and Finance Minister? Too bad, get used to it. And platitudes about the middle class while that dream slips away from more and more people. So why is this government catering to their billionaire and Bay Street friends instead of standing up for Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me the opportunity to talk about the good works this government is doing to address the serious challenges of 4.4 in the Industrial Revolution that's facing every single country in the world, and it's our goal to ensure that young people have a chance to be successful. That's exactly why we appointed the Youth Expert Panel on Employment, and we're looking forward to their interim report the beginning of December. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under our Conservative government, we had a judicial appointment system that served Canadians and the justice system well. It worked. Now, under the Liberal government, the system that worked so well was changed, and now we're faced with unreasonable delays in the Canadian criminal justice system. Now, it's a fact, Mr. Speaker, the current system employed by the Liberals is broken. Why did they go and fix something that wasn't broke?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud of the reorganization and the new process that we put in place, not only for the Supreme Court of Canada, but with respect to the appointments of Superior Court justices. I was very proud further to appoint 39 Superior Court judges across the country. I'm working to reconstitute the judicial advisory committees with the intent on supporting and promoting diversity so our benches reflect the diversity of the country and ensuring that we have the highest quality of jurists that I can appoint to the Superior Courts across this country, and I look forward to doing another round of appointments.
Member for Niagara Falls.
Well, please get on with it, Mr. Speaker. Canadians were shocked by recent headlines that carried appalling news of a man charged with murder whose trial was stayed for unreasonable delay. Now, today he's a free man who lives and works amongst our families, children, and law-abiding Canadians. There are hundreds of cases that could face the same fate across this country. Mr. Speaker, Canadian confidence in our criminal justice system is fading. When will the minister finally make victims of crime a priority?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looking comprehensively at reform to the criminal justice system is a priority of mine as instructed by the Prime Minister. I have been engaging across the country with my colleagues in the provinces and territories and will continue to do so to ensure that we find effectiveness and efficiencies in the criminal justice system. It is the administration of justice is a shared responsibility. There are innovative approaches. The province of Ontario recently introduced, or today actually, some suggestions in terms of advancing and dealing with court delays. We're going to continue to do that in a collaborative manner, something that we haven't seen in the last 10 years.
The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, thousands of Canadians struggle to get access to a family doctor. Seniors, cancer patients, expectant moms, and people living in rural and remote communities suffer when they're unable to access timely medical care. The Liberals are making it more difficult for Canada's most vulnerable to access care. Canadian doctors have warned that thousands of medical specialists could leave for the United States due to the Liberals' new tax hikes. Can the minister not see that his plans to suck more money into Ottawa's coffers will come at the expense of our most vulnerable and Canadians who need the help the most?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, one thing I can reassure the member is that this government is about tax fairness for all Canadians and making sure that Canadians pay their fair share of taxes. Mr. Speaker, what we have said, and the members knows it very well, we said that for one small business corporation, there will be one small business tax deduction. One corporation, one deduction. Canadians get it, Mr. Speaker. This is about tax fairness, and that's why we're going to stand on that.
Honourable Member for Brampton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, December 3rd will be the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Since 1992, this day is celebrated every year on December 3rd, all around the world. We know how important it is to educate people around the realities people with disabilities face. Can the Parliamentary Secretary inform this House on this important journey and the action taken by the government to ensure progress of persons with disability across the country?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague from Brampton Centre for his questions. Cette année, nous profitons.
This year, we are taking this opportunity to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Accord on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Canada is proud to be one of the first countries to sign that agreement.
17 goal for the future we want. In line with this goal, we have consultation in all the country for establishing a new law on accessibility. This will be ensuring that all Canadians are able to participate equally in their communities and workplace and make a better Canada.
Member for Carleton.
If the Environment Minister had done absolutely nothing, the people of Ottawa would now be on their way to building a big, beautiful hospital right across the street from the existing one. But she blocked it for research that her department says will be done before hospital construction even begins. Not to mention that half the land is either a helicopter pad or salted and therefore useless to research. Knowing these facts now, will she finally get out of the way and let us build a hospital?
Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, I have received the report from the National Capital Commission, and the NCC has provided a space for the public to express their priorities in finding a new site for the hospital, and I want to thank them. All levels of government need to be involved in order to achieve a final decision. We look forward to further our discussions with the city, the province, and the hospital itself in order to find a consensus. Thank you.
Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, this week the Liberal government betrayed the people of Vancouver Island. The Prime Minister says he's a grandson of British Columbia, so maybe he can understand. Our economy is tied to our ocean. Our culture is rooted to the sea. The health of the coast is the health of our environment, and it's the health of our communities. After promising to put the Kinder Morgan pipeline through a new assessment process, why is this government now putting at risk everything we hold so dear? Why are they betraying Vancouver Islanders?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, some members of this House believe the answer is the LEAP manifesto and the only choice for the future is to leave it in the ground. Others believe that the NDP should stand with Canadians trying to get back to work. These projects will create thousands of good-paying middle-class jobs. There isn't a country in the world that would find 200 billion barrels of oil and leave it in the ground while there are markets for it. Our decisions on major projects reflect a balanced approach that will create prosperity while we seek protecting the environment we cherish. Thank you.
Otto Danforth.
In Toronto and across Canada, the organization Ladies Learning Code is working to promote digital literacy and technology skills like writing computer codes, specifically for Canadian women and girls. Ladies Learning Code wants more women leaders in the tech industry. Can the Minister of Science advise the House what steps her department is taking to promote science, technology, engineering and math in Canada among girls and boys?
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from Toronto Danforth for an important question. Ladies Learning Code is a wonderful organization that teaches Canadians digital skills. I was privileged to sit in for a class for National Learn to Code Day. We are working hard to create a culture where young people are excited about science and technology, and particularly young girls. Each year, NSERC provides funding to organizations that get our youth excited about science.
Honourable Member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I asked if the Liberals would ensure Canadians could trade freely between provinces. It is unfathomable that Mr. Cuomo was charged for buying beer. Unfortunately, the Liberals said they would only support freer trade in Canada. I have to remind them that free trade in Canada is a constitutional right, and an agreement between provinces with dozens of exclusions, including beer and wine, and government interference is not free trade. Right. Will the Liberals commit to protecting Canadians' constitutional rights and ensure we have full free trade across Canada?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the member that we've been very clear, and myself included, along with our government, in advocating to liberalize trade of alcohol within Canada. This is an issue that I've raised with my provincial and territorial counterparts when we were pursuing the Canada Free Trade Agreement, and I'll make sure that we continue to advance this issue, as well as reducing barriers and harmonizing regulation, Mr. Speaker. We're very, very much committed to the fact that we want to see an environment where we create good opportunities for businesses to grow and better choices for consumers, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Moncton. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Democratic Institutions doesn't like the report that was tabled by the special committee, and particularly its recommendations, because it calls for a referendum on the electoral system and a more proportional system, and that without weakening Quebec's political weight. Could it be, maybe, just maybe, that if the minister is trying to discredit the report today, it's because the Liberals don't support proportional representation? And because the only electoral reform that they want is one that will keep them in power for years and years and years to come.
Institution.
I'd like to thank my honourable critic for his work on the committee. I know that the committee spent a lot of time and effort on this work, and I know, having gone and travelled the country, Mr. Speaker, that this is a complex question, and the challenge that we asked them to come back to us on was quite a big one. Mr. Speaker, the committee, while they offered areas that we do agree and understand, did not offer a specific alternative to first past the post. We thank them for their hard work. We will continue to review the report and hearing from Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Joliet. Mr. Speaker, what effect will Bill C-29 have? Well, currently hidden banking fees are not allowed in Quebec. That'll be gone. A consumer who's been taken advantage of by a contract can break it. That's gone. A bank can't change new fees without a client's consent. That's gone. Fines for misleading advertising. That's gone. The tribunal that looks at complaints is neutral. That's gone. The Minister of High Finance is supposed to protect consumers against bank. Why is he protecting the banks against consumers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. This allows me to remind him of the history behind this. The federal government was asked to clarify its position when it comes to protecting consumers, and that is exactly what we are doing, Mr. Speaker. We have modernized and simplified the rules to help Canadian consumers. There are provisions that will help Canadians. There are provisions that help that affect basic service. Clarity. This is exactly what consumers in Quebec and across the country have asked us to do, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members, the presence in the gallery of the honourable... We'll do this first, folks. And then I have a couple of points of order. I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Labi Kasoulis, Minister of the Public Service Commission and Minister of Internal Services for the province of Nova Scotia. The Honourable Chief Opposition Whip is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, today, during question period, the Minister of Democratic Reform said about the Electoral Reform Committee that it did not complete the hard work that we'd expected them to. Mr. Speaker, this committee met throughout the summer, and since the House returned...
This sounds like this would be... I'm gonna ask... Order. Member's mic is off. Order. I'm going to ask the member if he's got a standing order he's going to point to, a rule that's been broken he can point to. I'm certainly willing to hear that. I didn't hear that one there. I didn't. It sounds like debate to me. And the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands has indicated to me already that she wants to correct something said by someone else, which of course is debate and not a point of order. So unless she can point to a rule that's been broken, a standing order, then she's not going to be up on a point of order for very long. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
It is a point of order, Mr. Speaker, to point to the rules that say that no member shall speak disrespectfully of other members in this place, and I believe the